Good morning or evening. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chess Dojo's weekend rapid tournaments. She'll start in about 20 minutes. Let's see how the setup looks. Not classical chess. No, that info looks wrong. Turn on the title. The title's wrong too. Interesting. That's better. Let's get the info right. So today it's going to be rapid chess. Let's try turning on that view there. Very annoying. A lot of things not working with OBS lately. Okay, no way to select that. How nice. Seriously frustrating. There's no way to select the text and move it. I consider myself a calm and reasonable person. But OBS, you are driving me bonkers. Lost all control of OBS, and I might have to give up. Not on streaming, but on changing what the stream looks like in any way. Well, let's see if MooBot is working. Let's see if anything's working. There's some links to tournaments. Hey, Guyao. Hope you're doing well. Hi, Oscar. Hi, Tom. It looks okay, George, but I want to be able to change some things, and I can't change anything. I'm doing well. There we go. Now it's giving me some control again. Oh, and I can move it again. In full screen mode, it lets me move it. All right, for people on YouTube, I'm going to give another link over here. Let's see what that is again. It's clubs. Chess Dojo. Fair enough, Oscar. You played last week, which was really great. Yeah, just slash club. Okay, for people on YouTube, that chess.com/club/chessdojo is one way to find your way to the tournaments, and then you'll be able to see the links like that. No, it's going to be 15-minute games today, Paul. Today the time control is 15 plus 5, 1700 plus, 13 to 1700, or under 1300. The way arenas work, every time you play a game, it pauses the tournament for you, and you click when you're ready for another game, and then it'll pair you with the next available person, based on ratings and scores. You don't have to wait for other games to finish. You just wait on yourself. The arena lasts 3 hours. It starts in 15 minutes. Once it starts, I'll be doing live commentary on the games, rotating through the different sections. So whatever rating level you're at, we'll see some games around your level and comment on them and so forth. Go put up an announcement. All right, posted it up over there. So what should we talk about while we wait for the tournaments to start? Once the tournament starts, people always have 100 questions, like, do I think Aragaisi would win a match against Abdusattorov and stuff like that. So let's handle one or two of those questions before our games get started. And maybe I can pay attention to the games once the games are started. I feel like sometimes I answer too many questions during the games. Well, I mean too many questions that are not about the games. Of course, it's fine to ask. It's up to me to balance things out and make a good or great show out of it. Nice to have some extra stuff to chat about here and there. But of course, it's also important to comment on the games in between here and there. Did the previous World Champions meet the list of requirements? So Cross Online, things have changed as far as what it takes to become world champion. So they did not necessarily all have everything on the list. For example, one of the things on my list now was that someone has to be in good physical shape to be world champion now, right? Maybe they don't need to be professional athlete level shape, but they've got to be in decent physical shape. And I don't think that was necessarily the case 100 years ago. Competitions weren't so grueling. I don't know if Mikhail Tal was in good shape when he was world champion. Hey, George Hornsby. You know, I'm as surprised as most people, I think, by Jesse being so pessimistic about Hans even reaching the top 10. But he appears to genuinely be that pessimistic about Hans's chances of reaching the top 10. Yeah. I think Jesse I think all of us are very honest about what we think. That said, we might say something in the spur of the moment, and then when we reflect on it for an hour, then come to a different conclusion. I think Jesse seems to still believe that, despite, because we also talked about who was going to be top 10 next year, right? As well as the episode specifically on Neiman. And Jesse seems to think it's crazy that Kosi and I think that Hans could be number 10, which to me seems, not guaranteed, but certainly well within likelihood. Not a stretch. Nothing that would cause me to raise an eyebrow. So, is it legal? It is legal, Thinker Teacher. It's not recommended, but it's legal. So, you're an adult. You can make your own determinations. You don't need me telling you what to do. But insofar as I'm the person talking on the stream, I always do advise people to take chess, at least now and then, maybe always, to take chess often as an opportunity to monotask. Yeah. We won't accuse you of cheating. Honestly, you'd just be making it harder on yourself. By splitting your attention and or focus. Six years of playing chess and not taking it seriously. That's odd, Merles. Hans used to play a lot. What do you think changed? If he's not playing much, then maybe our prediction wasn't great. Your last OTP Classical games were in 2019. That's a while. That is quite a while. Hello, Panda Chess. Welcome to the show. Whether you're planning to play in the tournaments or watch the tournaments, you're very welcome. Those are serious events, Merles. What do you think is do you have any insight into what he's doing? He's playing Titled Tuesday all the time. Will I be playing? No, I will be commenting Muay Thai. That's my role in the proceedings. Exactly, Cough Bob. That's the dojo way. Well, I think Nakamura will be rated on the next FIDE list we were talking about because he's expressed several times that he wants to quit, but he only has to play one game to stay on the top 10 list, right? And I think even Norway chess wasn't rated for the June list. It's going to be rated for the July list. Right, he's playing an online match with Vidit right now. Is it classical or rapid or what? Chess is for everyone. Round 8. It says Hans has 1 minute and 40 seconds. It's hard to see the board on their breakthrough viewing thing. That endgame.ai thing was weird, that site. Anyway, back to my thing here. When you see people should play a bunch of different openings, do you recommend just starting to play something new in some rapid games or study the theory a bit first? Good question, George. I think you can just start playing it without any studying. And I do recommend playing it for a period of time, not just changing openings every game, right? Oh, thanks, HPLR. What I recommend, George, is kind of rotating, right? Playing one opening for 3 to 6 months. Depends on how much you play, you know, how soon it makes sense to move from one opening to another. Play an opening for a while, right? A few months, bunch of games. Get some knowledge with it. And at some point move on and learn another opening. And one of the main ways you learn stuff is just by playing. And different people learn in different ways, so some people will study a little bit more, and some people will review GM games in that opening to see like model games, and other people will do some more sparring and so forth. Will ever Gotham Chess become a GM? You know, Panda Chess, to answer that question really accurately, I would probably have to look at his OTB games, which I haven't really seen. I'd have to know a lot more about Gotham Chess than I do. But my off-the-cuff answer, do you want an uninformed off-the-cuff answer, or should I just say I don't know enough to answer? Is that good enough for you? Let's see if the 1700 plus group has enough people. By the way, Thinker Teacher, it looks like you're in the wrong section according to your rating. It looks like you clicked on the 13 to 1700 link instead of the 1700 plus link, and you might prefer the 1700 plus section. My words are good. So my vague guess, Panda Chess Tamil, is that to become GM, he would probably have to focus on... Okay, you're where you meant to be, Thinker Teacher. That's fine. Just checking. My guess would be that he has to focus on OTB chess to become GM, and it seems to me that he would probably want to keep streaming and posting YouTube videos and stuff like that.
So that would make me sort of lean towards it's unlikely that he becomes a GM. You know, if he were trying to become world champion, I could basically just say my opinion is it's basically impossible for someone who's not completely focused on becoming world champion. Becoming GM is not as hard as becoming world champion. So it doesn't 100% require that you be 100% focused. There are geniuses who do something else and become a GM at the same time, right? Like they go through, I don't know, medical school, or they have a second career in economics or something like that. So it's not impossible for him to make GM just because he's doing other things, but it just makes it a little bit less likely, right? Tournament starts in 2 minutes, by the way, folks. Games are starting in 2 minutes. It's also probably impossible for any 29-year-old 2300 to become world champion, even if they totally focus. True. Could I become a GM if I focus and have $100,000 in the bank to spend on chess? I wouldn't really need much money in the bank to spend on chess to become a GM, Panda Chess to Meal. What I would really need is time. I would probably need at least 2 years of 50, 60 hour a week focus, which is not going to happen for me. But I do think that even at age 30 or age 40, it's still possible for an IM to become a GM. Hey, Guao. Yeah, Thinker Teacher has chosen to play in the other section. They have some kind of reason for it. So, yeah, last of the tournament is kicking off any moment now. Games will be starting in moments here. Coaches are expensive. Yeah, I think Panda Chess to Meal, I wouldn't really need a coach. I could just work with other IMs who are trying to become GMs and just practice together and so forth. All right, let's check out the games, yeah? I hear you, Sanyal. It does take some energy. All right, let's see if this under 1300 group got started or not. Earlier, there weren't many players waiting for the under 1300. Yeah, under 1300 got canceled, but 13 to 1700 is still there. So anyone under 1300 who joins later will be invited to play the 13 to 1700 if they want to. All right, so let's open up some games here in the under 1300 group. Oh, sorry, in the under 1700 group. Got GeorgeHornsby playing here with Expressed Affection. Got Zack on track against Emergence. Well, hopefully you'll learn something then, Panda Chess. Have fun. Enjoy the games. And let us change, just take a moment here to change the command so people understand that the under 1700 section is open to them. So we'll call this under 1700. So anybody lower who comes in later can feel comfortable joining that group. All right. So this looks like a center counter. It is not. Oh, white c-pawn is gone. d5. Takes. Queen takes. Knight c3. bishop d2. That's a careful move. White would love to just kick black around and make the big pawn center, but knight e4. Tactically, it would just lose the pawn. So white takes a moment to deal with the queen on that diagonal towards the king. Black makes space to run away with the queen like in the center counter. And now white could be playing e4, and they do. And developing pieces, and it's a pleasant opening position for Emergence. Zack on track has a center counter type position, but white has a pawn on e4 instead of c2. I would say that's a big advantage for white. So even though black got the bishop outside of this pawn chain, I would guess that this position is very nice for white. That said, I have a bias in favor of occupying the center with pawns. You know, I really love to do it. And yeah, I like white's position a lot myself. As Cross says, anybody who's playing in the tournament, please mute or close the stream while you're playing. When you're between games, or when you're, whenever you're done with a game, when you're not playing, you're welcome to always come pop back in, rejoin us, say hi, talk about your games with us. And we'll be happy to discuss and share your excitement or your misery with you, depending on how the game went. Black plays knight bd7. This is a natural square for this rook, but I don't know that any of these kind of moves are big threats early on. Hey, Panda Chess. Yeah. Apparently Magnus auctioned a pair of jeans at some point, right? So he probably has to buy some new ones. Rook c1 from Emergence. Okay. So to me, this move could go well with d5 at some point. It could also just be a fine square for the rook, period, kind of making it harder for black to play c5 and counter white's center because of the rook. And he gave money to charity. Nice. Love it. My first contact with Magnus was actually around jeans. It was when he was modeling for G Star Raw, a jeans company. And they needed a partner or were looking for a partner to organize an exhibition chess event in New York as part of New York's Fashion Week. Maybe I'm calling it wrong, but that's what I remember it being called, Fashion Week. So, yeah, jeans. I don't actually wear jeans myself very often. I find them less comfortable than pants that aren't jeans. I don't know what the kind of pants I wear are, but I wear a kind of pants, and they're not jeans. I would call them normal pants, but that's probably not the technical word. All right, so Zack plays bishop e7. White has to decide, is this d5 move really amazing early on, or do we build up the position more in some way first? Do we play h3, seeing about resolving this situation, trying to grab the bishop pair? Do we put the rook on e1 or d1 before we engage in any future action? Maybe e5 even could be an interesting move, because if knight d5 you can take, the c-pawn can't take back, so black would have to do this structure here. with this nice space for white. That's playable for white as well. That's totally an option. It's not necessarily crushing, but it's definitely an option. Does Magnus look like he's rich? I don't know. Sometimes he looks pretty spiffy, and other times he looks like, you know, he rolled out of bed, pulled on some dirty jeans from yesterday, and rolled over to the chessboard. Hard to say for sure. Am I rich? Yeah. I guess so. By many measures or definitions. Oh, look at that. Emergence goes for e5. And really thought about it here. So Emergence, interesting thing, like you don't want to spend hours in a 15-minute game pondering strategic questions. You really need a good chunk of your time to do some little key calculations at some point in the game. But Emergence did stop here and really think about, direction of the game. H3, E5, D5, which way to go. So I think Emergence invested 2.5 minutes here wisely and made a choice about the direction of the game. So that's cool. Hey, Skibix. Oh, sorry, you're probably over here, Skibix. But for me, you're over here. I have a second monitor set up now, finally, here in Hawaii. So I can look over here for the chat and over here for the chess games. Oh yeah, I do have a nice shirt. It's a Kailua shirt. These are the twin islands that you can see from the beach here. Are we going for a minority attack now, asks Oscar. So for white, that would be b4, b5. A minority attack is pretty rare when this pawn has advanced here. Normally, once you've got this strong pawn, you play around the strength of the pawn and the space you have there, right? But here, the rook opposite the queen means, and the bishops are defending these moves b4, b5. You really could consider b4, b5 here as white and try and make black unpleasant on the c file, but I'm going to guess that that's wrong, even though it looks strangely more possible than normal. Normally what you see in these positions is white wants to put this pawn here, form a head duo, crush the king's side. And black normally wants to play c5 at some point to undermine this pawn center, and if they don't have time to do it and can't do it, sometimes they play f6 just to get some breathing space on the king side before this pawn comes up, even though f6 is fighting white at their strongest point. Now the bishop here is messing with how white can handle this position. Emergence has done something. Let's see what Emergence came up with. Rook e1, spending time. Castles quickly from black. Queen c2, spending lots of time from white. This move maybe threatens knight to g5. Mildly threatens. It's not like a game-winning threat, just to make some positional progress. Maybe threat. Emergence not really sure how to handle this. It's showing a little hesitancy on the clock. I wouldn't know either, and I would also be doing the same thing as Emergence. Unfortunately, I'm going to say for both of us, because in a rapid game, you actually have to save that time for calculations later. You can't be thinking 3 or 4 different times about how do you develop your game. You just have to go with some instinct. Now, often, I have an instinct that doesn't work, and then I don't have a follow-up instinct. So what am I supposed to play, right? What would be the move to play on instinct? That's a confusing puzzle for many of us, right? Some people have just a supply of simple little moves. How do you turn off pre-moves on a phone? I've never played chess on a phone, so somebody help HPLAR in chat, please. How to turn off pre-moves on a phone, or even undo one that's currently active on HPLAR's phone. Yikes. Normally just clicking on the board is how you undo it in a browser on a computer. You just click somewhere else on the board, I think. Like if I had this pre-moved, I would right click maybe to undo a pre-move. Bartosz is saying press the arrow back move. Okay, Zack has stopped for the first major think of the game from Zack's side of it. So Zack's either wondering about knight g5 or wondering about some big question about what does Zack want to do. Because up to this point, yeah, after e5, Zack knew he wanted to go into the center. And of course, black wanted to get castling done. So I can see how Zack was able to play these moves quickly up till this point. And now it's like, well, what are we doing? Are we playing f6? Are we playing c5? Where do the rooks go based on what kind of pawn moves we might want to do later? So definitely, yeah, this is where you'd expect Zack to have a think. Now, Andrew wants to join the arena. Andrew, we've got two groups today, over and under 1700, and Oscar Chess has just given you the links there. The first link is for under 1700, and the second link is for over 1700, based on chess.com rapid rating. And then we've got an interesting question on this topic from Stamen, asking for any advice or tips on balancing spending time trying to understand and recognize the opponent's ideas versus spending time coming up with your ideas, right? Like how much of your time should you spend trying to come up with a plan for you, and how much of your time should you spend figuring out what your opponent's up to and trying to deal with it? For me, Stamen, these two things are usually pretty much linked. It's kind of one and the same in terms of my time. Maybe there's a little difference to it, but when I'm thinking anything strategic, I'm kind of thinking about both at once. Oh, that would be great, Cross. That would be great. You'll only know if you would enjoy it if you try it. So we can try it. And if it's awful, you can always just bow out, Just say that one of your kids is calling for you from the other room or whatever. That would be a pretty plausible out. So for me, Stamen, when I think about something strategically, I kind of think about where is white strong, where is black strong, where is white weak, stuff like that. And to me, that kind of informs what both sides' strategic ideas are. Where I struggle a little bit sometimes is noticing my opponent's tactical options. That has occasionally been something where I'm like just, when I'm calculating, I look harder for the moves from my side than for their side. In other words, let's say I'm going down a variation, and I'm going, queen b6, knight g5, bishop g5, bishop g4, bishop d2. Say I'm going down some variation like that, and then I think, oh, it doesn't work. Then I'll look really hard for, is there some other move that does make it work? What if I play bishop a5? What if, I'll look really hard for some exceptional move to make the line work for myself. But then once I make the line work, I won't look for some exceptional move for the opponent sometimes. You know what I mean? I just won't push as hard to find options for them. So, depending whether you were asking about strategic ideas for yourself and your opponent or tactical ideas for yourself and your opponent, I would say that a tip for the tactical part is to sort of train yourself to look just as hard for candidate moves for both sides. For the tactical part. And for the strategic, I would say learn to see the strategic as two sides of one coin. In other words, your strength is your opponent's weakness, your opponent's strength is your weakness. You know, your good pieces are the pieces they want to trade, your bad pieces are the ones you want to improve, their bad pieces are the ones they probably want to improve. You know, you just start seeing it in that way, I think, right? As all these, you know, whatever imbalances you see in the position are kind of either your strengths or their strengths, and then how is each player going to try and play with them, right? Do you need to take advantage of a time lead? Do they need to slow things down to catch up because you have a time lead? Etc. How can you reach 2,000 rating? Panda Chess Tamil, you told me earlier today that you were 2,100. So to reach a 2,000 rating, just don't pay attention for a few games and your rating should go down. Emergence does go for this knight g5 move, so black's going to have to trade that knight because of the threat of queen h7 checkmate. So we get one trade there. White takes here. And then black's probably going to need to trade here because they've got two pieces hanging, but Zack's double checking it. White's going to plan to recapture. Oh, you're 1,200. All right, so either I flipped it with my eyes or it was mistyped. You're 1,200. Okay, gotcha. Can black take on d4 right now? Crazy move, Jim Inner. Yeah, very cool idea. Jim Inner asks if black can play queen d4. That's the kind of move that Emergence might not have considered. Again, because most of us don't look that hard for good moves for our opponents. And it might be a move that somehow wins a pawn. That would be incredible, leaving both black pieces hanging, but attacking both white pieces. That's an amazing move, Jim Inner. Panda Chess, how can you reach 2,000 rating? You don't want to go with theory. Okay, so 800 points to go. Can I say, Panda Chess, first, you should try to make 1,300? It's fine to have 2,000 as a goal, but maybe just focus on getting a little bit better each time. You know what I mean? Like work from 1,200 to 1,300. See what you have to do to get from 1,200 to 1,300. And once you get there, work on what you need to work on to get from 1,300 to 1,400. I would just recommend to you the dojo training program, honestly, if you want to know how you can gain 800 rating points. I think this exclam training command will probably give you a link to it. chessdojo.club. Not to stereotype, but the word Tamil in your name suggests you might be in India. And our training program has a reduced price in India to reflect the currency. So have a look. And I would think that our program can definitely get you to 1,300. And once it definitely gets you to 1,300, it can probably definitely get you to 1,400. And you can come check in with me here on Twitch chat any day you like and let me know about your progress and what is or isn't working for you. And I can maybe give you some personal tips to work on it. You know? Glad to hear it, John. Rating slowly going up. Oh my goodness. Look at this, folks. Zack on track found queen takes d4. And Emergence packed it in after losing one pawn. Jim Inner and Stamen was looking at queen takes d4. So, yeah, so if white played bishop d7, then the move bishop d2 would actually be a mistake because white can play rook d1, right? But the key is black should take with the queen. And then, after something like rook here, queen here, rook here, black is up a pawn. Yeah, resigning because you lose a pawn is Panda Chess Tamil. If you put it, it should recognize that you're from India and give you a price much lower than $15 a month. $15 a month is the US price. So, yeah, definitely you have to play out that sequence as white that we just saw, folks, right? After queen takes d4, Emergence should keep playing. At most, white's losing a pawn, plus black has to find the right sequence. So, maybe they thought they were losing a piece with 2 pieces attacked, but that's a matter of keeping your calm when your opponent surprises you, right? I mean, John, honestly, I wouldn't resign against a GM in a tournament. So if that tells you anything about whether a 2000 should resign or whether there's so much to learn, I mean, I think I could still draw that position because it's going to be opposite colored bishops if I play it right. Right after queen d4, if I play bishop g5, queen takes g4, I've got bishop against knight. That feels really risky. Black puts the knight on e6 at some point. Could be lost. But if I play bishop takes d7, queen d2, then I get an opposite colored bishop ending, down 1 pawn, right? I mean, maybe I'll lose, but not guaranteed that I'll lose yet, even against a GM. So fight we do. Let's check another game. So I'm going to close this arena and go to the 1700 plus and grab a game from up there. All right, so let's check out VLaurent versus vonWalthoffen. They each have this little diamond thing. That just means they're diamond members of chess.com, right? And then it's not really showing a flag. European Union and Poland. Okay. This looks like a Queen's Gambit exchanged structure. I'm just going to back up so we can see where the game came from, okay? So Queen's Gambit, exchanged. Queen c2 to stop the bishop from going to f5. The bishop comes out somewhere anyway on g4. Gets harassed a little bit. Nice. Bishop g5, knight bd7. Could consider a move f4 here, trying to clamp the knight. Possibly. Oh my goodness, white did. How fascinating. So this game, within just 8 or 9 moves, goes outside of the really standard Queen's Gambit exchange type positions and gets pretty interesting and funky here. The early bishop on g5 followed by this pawn f4 move, this not being developed yet. There's some slightly weird possibilities here. Like, for example, let's say black played queen a5. Sorry, one other factor before we get into moves is this bishop is slightly weird over here, right? Like, there's some chance for white to play g4 and f5 type moves on this bishop as well. The e-pawn is backward, but the idea is that black can't pressure it on the file because of the outpost kind of blocking the file. But bishop e7 was played in the game. The move queen a5, asking white, how do you feel about the move knight e4? That's a real question for the bishop on g5, right? Am I still useful over here when there's no queen on d8? Do I trade? Do I run? Etc. Some people still don't get f4. I mean, the idea of f4 is to keep the knight on e5, and if your opponent ever takes it, you play fe5. That's kind of the primary idea of f4. It's sort of clamping a strong point for your piece and gaining space on the king side, right? Using that knight and the pawn structure together to gain space on the king side. Black played a simple developing move, so white continued developing. E3, H6. Makes a trade. Gonna develop the bishop. Now it looks just good for white to me. This bishop looks like it's in trouble because it can't fall back to G6 without an H7 pawn. Well, it'll lose a pawn, right? There's a plan of H3, G4 here. Knight G4. Attacking E3. Trades it. Castles. All right, white's trying to win the bishop with H3, G4. Queen D6. White's cut off its retreat, right? So now the idea is on H3 to have this move Queen G3 at some point. White goes after with the rook instead. Whew! Okay, now H3, bishop takes. This is not actually a perpetual check because this queen can come across. However, Queen E3 check, and you drop the bishop, right? So we could calculate H3 even harder than that, right? Like here, check. We could go for King H1, check. Then we block. Now this isn't with check, right? And then we could even look at Rook E1, Queen here, taking on E7 or Queen C7 or something. Maybe this could be a smart move. The bishop can't take because of Rook E1. If Queen D3, Pawn E7 gets the black king kind of stuck. Pawn takes pawn. God, Rook E1, E7 is almost checkmate, but it's not. And almost checkmate's not good enough. Ah, it's so close to checkmate. Okay, so H3, not sure about it yet. Rook F4 got played. Black plays H5 defending the bishop. H3 is going to trap that bishop, and Black's just going to attack the rook. We're going to get some trades. White's going to have to take that piece. Now Black could play HG or Queen F4. One makes sure to get the queen into the game. The other makes sure to get the rook into the game. I think the queen's more valuable, plus this move here, you threaten Queen D4 check. I mean, you really get in, and it's hard for White to avoid this pawn trade. But Black plays HG4, and now White definitely could defend this pawn. Maybe even with Queen E2, Queen E5. Maybe Black's planning to go Queen H6 if White defends the F pawn, and that's why they prioritized getting the file open. The question from Black's perspective would be Queen F4, G5. That keeps your rook from ever getting to the game. You're sacking the pawns, but Black can probably only take one of them. So that would be the move that vonWalthoffen would have worried about here before taking on F4 was what about G5, keeping that file closed. G3 from Laurent. Yeah, that keeps the queen out of here, and against Queen H6, you can come here and defend these squares. Uh-oh. That doesn't quite look good enough for Black, does it? No. Black's got one pawn and a rook against knight and bishop. So the game's pretty tense and pretty close. But I would prefer White. King safety is going to be an important factor. Right now, Black's king is pretty snug, and White's is pretty open. Maybe the position's much closer than I would first think. Maybe Black's fine, even without Queen F4. I had a feeling like Queen F4 might be an advantage for Black, honestly. It is a wild position, yes. But when you say wild for 2,000 plus rated players, do you expect 2,000 plus players to play like relatively more calmly and solidly and less wildly? I think Foo's chess is pointing out a very important defensive idea for White. This bishop could go to G2 to cover some of the squares on the H file and defend the king quite a bit. Rook H3 for Black on an X move could double with a tempo because White probably cannot or does not want to sacrifice this pawn. Yeah. So that makes bishop f1 immediately even more of a priority, I think, to deal with rook h3. Okay, so if I'm reading that right, Stamen, you expect 2,000 plus players to more often play kind of positionally versus super imbalanced, right? I would say in this game it was white who kind of provoked the game to get this wild, Stamen, with that idea of f4, f5. You see this here, right here, f5. This move, locking that bishop on the king side, you know, and it's a tempo move that's not developing, etc., right? It's not like a standard move. This move kind of pushed the game in this controversial direction. Rook e1 is the choice. Okay, so black could say, I've got 2 rooks, you don't get any files, or black could say, rook h3, I'm going for it, and black goes for it. Panachess Tamil, I can't watch your game while you're listening here in chat with us. I look at the games of players who are not listening to the stream. Rook h3. So now black's going to be able to double here and even triple. Very nice. Okay, Jim's saying white's king looks super weak, but I would still prefer to defend with white. Now that rook h3 has come, I think I no longer really prefer white. I think I would have preferred white maybe on bishop f1 here, maybe bishop e2, taking g4. Oh no, but rook h3 can come anyway, and then rook g3. Queen e2. Queen h6. Yeah, no, I think only bishop f1 to g2 do I like for white. So now I'd say black's in it. Yeah, once black gets 3 pieces on the h file, there are definitely rook sacks possible. And a move like knight e2 here cuts your queen off from the king side. So that's generally a losing move. Okay, Oscar Chess is thinking maybe rook e3 gives you time to play bishop f1 next move. White has played rook e3. I don't know, Panda Chess Tamil. Do you know? I think it may only be Alyechin's gun, yeah, if the queen is behind the rooks. Rook dh8. Okay, and so now white wants to go bishop f1. And they do. Okay, Oscar Chess has a sharp line. Let's see, what was it? Rook h1, king f2, rook h2, bishop g2. Well, that's just the beginning of the line, yeah? So it can go rook check, as is being played. King here's forced to avoid mate from here, then here. Then black plays this move, right? The threat is rook g2, king g2, queen h2, checkmate. And then we need a defensive move for white, right? Black's playing a move quickly here. Queen h6, yeah. Oh, wait. Queen h6 without rook check? So they want to check, bishop blocks, queen g1. Yeah, but I mean, wasn't this thing more or less checkmate? Merle's thought black could maybe even commit to this and then go here and then still deliver checkmate, right? I don't see a way out for the king. Can't run fast enough and no one can get on the other side of it. So to me, black had two different ways to checkmate here. Rook h2, bishop g2, queen h6, and rook h2, bishop g2, rook g2. Rook f1 here was also already an idea. But the nice thing about rook h2, bishop f1, rook g2 stamen is you play the same kind of rook sack, but you actually draw the opponent's king towards you. That said, I can now calculate that you're right. Rook f1 also wins here. Not as much as the other, because white has the option of sacking the queen. And you have to play the queen versus rook and knight endgame, but it is a winning endgame. And if the king avoids rook h2, then we transpose to this. So yes, rook f1 check was also winning right here. Instead, we got queen h6. Odd. But maybe we could do something similar with this move. Look at this. Threatening queen g1. Knight e2 to stop queen g1. But remember how I said knight e2 is basically always a bad sign, locking your queen away from that side of the board, locking the rook away, keeping the king from moving past this way. It's a real get in the way kind of moment here, right? This knight here. We can sack the queen just the same as a rook. Does the same exact thing here, right? Yeah, good on you guys for seeing it all coming. Once you realize this checkmate doesn't actually rely on it being a queen. Normally, that's why you want to lead with the rooks and then bring the queen in behind them, because it's easier to sack the rooks and then still give checkmate with the queen. Here, any heavy piece will do. And so in this position, there was a suggestion maybe queen d3 somewhere. For this? Oh, okay, I see. It's in this position, queen h6, queen d3 for Lauren, queen check, and then come this way. Never give the bishop block because there's just the sack. And then queen b2. Yeah, this king is super open and exposed here. Just a matter of time before white loses here. Definitely lost. So, yeah, black misses a few checkmates with queen h6. But still appears to be winning, and Lauren's clock is ticking down painfully. Goes for knight e2. So maybe the idea is queen h2, king e1, right? To start running here. But black will have queen h2, king e1, queen g2, and then you just keep running and drop the bishop. That's going to be completely lost. So, yeah. Hey, Levon, the play command only works over on Twitch. So if you want to get into the tournaments from YouTube, why don't you try that chess.com/club/chessdojo link. See if you can find the tournaments there. Missing a few checkmates with 8 minutes on the clock and only spending 17 seconds on the move. I agree, Jiminer. VonWalthoffen should have used some more time. On that queen h6 move. Yeah. Queen h2 check, king runs, queen g2 chasing the bishop. So that bishop is dead right there. Yeah, and then it's rook against knight with the king on the run, plus white's down a pawn over here. And the rooks are very powerful. They've used an open file. They're getting an open rank. These are going to be very powerful rooks. Once the bishop drops, it'll kind of be only a matter of time before black, I don't know, piles up on the knight and wins the knight too. Okay, MG Weirdo was thinking this looked interesting. I also thought this looked interesting. But here we are at a point where even white trading the queen, black's not getting as much as they could have by just attacking and winning the bishop for free. But I assumed white would just have to trade the queen for rook, but now that we actually look at this position, maybe rook e2 would actually not break, huh? Yeah. Okay, let's see in the game. Queen g2, king d2. Queen f1, chasing. This gives the queen access to all these squares to pursue the king. And then this rook can come here next. White throws an f6, looking for some saving checks from the queen. Black should play g6 to prevent that. You can also go queen e1 check, king d3, queen d1 check, and trade queens. Black gives a check, king here. I suppose also here you don't have to hurry queen d1. The king's blocking this move, so you could do a little bit of whatever here as black. You could take or push. It's surprising that rook e2 works, right, MG Weirdo, because it feels like white shouldn't be able to cover themselves in that line. But for me, my instincts are kind of a guide, and my tactics are the answer, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, my instincts tell me I should look at this line, or I should look harder, or I shouldn't waste my time on this thing. But when I calculate a bunch of stuff in a tactical position like that, the calculation ultimately is what I have to believe. Because I do believe that chess is a concrete game, and sometimes, I think sometimes specifically what's happening is just specifically what's happening. You know what I mean? Like, there's not like a greater reasoning behind it. A variation just works or doesn't work, and you just have to accept that often, I believe. All right, rook attacks the queen. She'll need to reposition. F1 is a likely square. She can also go to C1, is fine. So if king d2, there's rook, next rook coming down to h2, which looks very strong. So white might just block on e2 here with the rook or the knight. Either way, this rook coming down will be strong. Yeah, black is 1600, white is 2100. That's correct. White played very aggressively, and when you play very aggressively, then you have to play very precisely, I guess, right? Like your decisions have such huge repercussions then. So missing bishop f1 and letting black play rook h3, that was all it took to go from an interesting position that was probably good for white to a position that was completely winning for black. You know, that's all it took. Thanks, Jiminer. I like it too. This 1600 is not using an engine, Richie. Uh-oh. King c7. And white gets the hope afforded by a check. There goes a pawn. So that's some hope for white. Knight recentralizes, takes aim at g4. Well, he's trying to build a cozy place for the king in the middle of the board. It's not a normal home for a king, but, you know, you do the most you can with what you have. You don't understand king c7. Yeah, I don't either. And clearly it wasn't a good move. VLaurent looks at the king from another angle. This d5 move was surprising to me, but Laurent only has 13 seconds, so. King moves. Black can take the pawn with the pawn or the rook. Takes it with the rook. Threatening rook c5. b3. That doesn't stop rook c5, does it? Well, Richie, I'm sorry that you've faced cheaters online. So have many of us. But you shouldn't be playing too many cheaters. And certainly if you play in dojo tournaments, you won't face many cheaters. They're very, very, very rare in chess dojo tournaments. So VLaurent recovers from the slight blip with knight d5 check. Gets a grip, brings the rook this way. I'm sure the original plan was to bring the rook to h3 or h2. So good flexibility. This move here was probably a small surprise for VLaurent, or a big surprise for VLaurent as well. But they managed it well, bringing the rook around to this side, and GG. Big upset win for VLaurent. All right, let's grab another game. Go to the under 1700 section again. Got Bob Cove against Baymone, or GeorgeHornsby against Thinker Teacher. This one looks like black's up one pawn. This one here is a little bit earlier. Maybe we'll pick up this one here. I think black is also up a pawn in this one. So, white being down this e4 pawn, DE4. Black must have traded the dark squared bishop on c3 for the knight to hold the e4 pawn. It has a little bit of a Black Redeemer Gambit kind of feel, this position. Let's see what it was. Good Lord, 95. Wow. That's a weird move. Knight d7. d4. And here Baymone really missed a chance to simplify things out a little bit with knight takes knight and queen takes d1. If I had to guess, I would guess that Baymone saw it and felt that in this position they wouldn't be able to defend the pawn because this is stopping knight f6. That would be my guess. Then I would say probably black still has a way to get a great position here. Either while white's winning the pawn back, or even maybe preventing white from getting the pawn back too easily with something like f5, pawn takes, knight takes. You know, but my instincts tell me knight e5 is a good move here. It's a good moment to trade that knight. Takes good advantage of what's happened so far. Baymone holds the e-pawn. Bishop c4. Then just does some good old development. Bob Cove says b4, b5's in the air. No, says knight e4's in the air. And that's where the bishop trades to defend the e-pawn. Kicks the bishop back. Maybe asked for a take back. Gave it to him. Very polite. Baymone there. White probably mouse slipped trying to play bishop e2. And Baymone very, very generous there. Lets the bishop go. Maneuvers the knight to a great outpost on d5. And uses it immediately. Okay. Okay. So now black is up an exchange, but it's actually still a very hard to play position. This bishop's trapped. The dark squares are weak. The rooks don't have any files or any scope just yet. Hard to play. Knight d5, I like that as the start. Covering some dark squares with the knight. And freeing the f-pawn to go to f6 or f5 or f4. I think we need the help of this pawn because none of our pieces are doing what they need to. Uh-oh, c4. David didn't see that coming. Didn't count on it. If pawn takes pawn, there's queen b7. So the knight goes in again and has to get itself traded, huh? So much for that knight on the nice outpost. Now f6 looks right. f6 actually might be pretty good. Yeah, this is the moment for f6 to save black. Baymone goes for f5. I know I say save black when black is up material, but trust me, this position is very hard to play for black. That's why I want something really strong. So f6, the knight has almost no squares, only this one that I can see. And then we can go f5, send the knight back, and play f4. Send the bishop over here, and then land this move queen h5 before white can sort everything out. That's the only sequence I saw that I really found convincing for black in this position here. So let's see if I'm right or wrong that after f5 it won't be so easy to play for black. Bishop h4. Ooh, that still walks into queen h5, doesn't it? Yeah. So what I was thinking was this move for white. Stopping f4. And then I find it hard for black to challenge those minor pieces. Bishop h4. So black could look at h6, g5, but queen h5 is the main move. Same forks as Warrior Boys. You mean like g5, bishop g5, queen h5 would still win?
Hey David, would it be okay if I ask you for a quick piece of Dojo Sensei advice?
Absolutely, JDW. Ask us. Ask away. Yeah, I hear you, Warrior Boys. Okay, so let's check that. Bishop f4, g5. Bishop g5, queen h5. Hitting these pieces. Yeah. So on g5, the bishop would have to do this. But you see here the game will go on. The game will go on. Versus f6, there's no time to save that bishop, right? It has to fall right into where it dies. Hey, Bourbon Hound, it is chess.com rated. All right, queen h5 played by Baymone. And queen h4. Oh god, a million moves came in while we were analyzing that. All right, so Baymone's cleaning this up. Extra rook and bishop for black. That'll be GG coming in here. Those last moves came in very fast. Once Baymone found queen h5, it all fell apart. All right, let's check another game. Six pawns each. Black with a slightly more compact structure, white with more space. White's playing bishop e3, looking to trade off half of black's bishop pair. Then we'd get a normal bishop versus knight situation. All right, take care, Panda Chess Tamil. See you next time. And black tries to keep that bishop pair on the board with bishop a5. All right. So white can pursue it with bishop d2 and insist on trading. And they do. So trading would still be the same thing. Bishop could bounce back again. It doesn't change too much. Does anyone have the advantage here? Is there somebody who really doesn't want to move back and forth? I would slightly prefer to be black here. Do you have experience with this time control losses on this cock? A tiny bit of experience with it. I mean, 2 games is not a lot of experience, is not a lot of data, but you can just feel it regardless of the data. Maybe if you feel like you're playing too slow or too fast or something. The boy not available is the one who backs off from the repetitions, readjusts the bishop to the long diagonal, and keeps the game going. Very brave decision for sure, which is commendable, but I think it does favor the opponent. 40-degree heat. Yipes. Yeah, that could be tough. I don't feel right today either for some reason, Mumuxia. And my body just doesn't feel right. Getting straight into a chair the moment I wake up somehow is not feeling right for me. Bishop h3 looks natural, but it doesn't seem to work out. I agree. I thought about this position. First thing I thought was bishop h3, gh3, queen g3. I didn't believe it. Then I thought rook e8, and I thought e5 looks fine for white. And finally, I concluded black should play f6 just to stop e5. That's my feeling about what black should do. But we get rook e8. We get e5 from white. And now, does black need to trade right away, or can they just leave that tension? I suppose black could probably leave it if they really wanted to. I'm going to try to jump around a little bit and see if my body gets happier. My legs are just tapping away, so I'm going to try and do something. See if I can feel more normal. Would be nice at a moment like this to have a standing desk, of course, but I'll be right back. Just 30 seconds of jumping up and down or doing push-ups and things. I mean, in any case, it's not good to sit in a chair for too long. It's good to get up for a moment now and then. Black goes A takes B3, introducing other possible rook trades. Queen B3. Now bishop takes H3 and queen G3 look very tempting. Queen G3. Now with this order, white could keep the bishop away like this. Takes. There's a move played already. E6 is played in the game. And then the bishop could maybe come here. Okay, maybe this is happening. Takes. Black can't take the pawn. It's defended enough times with the queen b3. But the bishop can dodge to another good diagonal here. So there was an important question. Should black have played bishop h3 before e6 could come, right? And then takes queen here. Seems fairly difficult to defend h3, right? Here's a relevant variation. Knight g1, bishop takes, recapture, mate. All right, anybody over 1700 who wants a game? Last the son of Skak is Skak is looking in the 1700 plus group. So this looked very good for black, this bishop h3 sacrifice. I think Warrior Boy's production was saying it would work, and it looks to me like it would. White does have, you know, putting a piece on d4 or putting a knight on h2, right? Like, they can keep playing. They can give this pawn and keep playing. It's not an immediate knockout. It's just two pawns and the king's in bad shape. Who knows? Maybe it's even better to play as black did, right? Like, queen g3 threatening bishop h3, and then trade and bring the bishop to c6. You know, maybe this is even better. I don't know. d5 is super complicated, though. It's not easy to call. Black threatens rook e6. White defends the pawn. Black under a minute. White under 2. Very close to running out of time in a complicated position. Both of them are. Let's tackle JDW's question maybe right after this game ends, JDW. Because it looks like you've got a good solid question. If I answer it, I might miss sort of the high point of this game. So let's follow this game for 2 minutes, and then we'll get into your question. And hopefully it's a meaty question. We'll get into it deeply. d5 looked odd to me as well, Warrior Boys. Just visually, it was not where I expected the game to go. I was expecting something with this rook maybe. You know, like rook a4 over to the king side, or rook e7 to bring this rook to e8 or f8. I don't know. But I didn't see anything like obviously great for black either. Oh my god, we're getting into a mess here, right? So white struggles to defend the pawn. Black kicks the knight. It goes in. Black can't take on e6 till they reposition the queen. Maybe the knight can live here for a while. Who knows? It doesn't have a way of backing up, but also white's got like threats on the king side brewing, potentially of their own, right? Two rooks here. Bishop g7, queen g3 could be like the theme if black played queen c5 here, for example. Black did play queen c5. So here, bishop g7, king g7, queen g3 is very plausible already. Very plausible. It's not the only thing possible. White goes bishop b4. I guess maybe looking for queen g3 without a bishop sack. I think bishop g7 looked sound. Oh my god, black has no time left. Literally no time. 0 minutes and 0 seconds. So that's where it ends. All right, GG. I mean, Emergence played a lot of good-looking moves, but the time control, as some people mentioned, is definitely a factor here. 15 plus 5. It's rapid. It's not quite blitz, but it's fast enough that you don't win just by getting a good position, right? You also have to be pretty fast. Let's take a quick break from game coverage to talk about JDW's struggle. So for those on YouTube, here's what JDW wrote. I'm struggling to find a full uninterrupted 1.5 hours of time in my schedule for the games I need for my cohort. And I use Lichess Classical as my preferred rating, but rating is provisional at the moment. And it's currently 6 cohorts above my current one and would require longer time control games and make it completely impossible for the next month or so to get any games. Do I stay in the same cohort until I get the provisional tag off my rating, or do I move up some cohorts? How many games would it take, JDW, to unprovisional your rating? Because if you're 6 cohorts above, it sounds like you might be surprised at how fast your rating changed, and maybe you don't know whether or not your rating is accurate. Moshi Moshi?
Hello?
Moshi Moshi?
Hello? Moshi Moshi?
Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Just a way of weeding out robocalls. Probably about 2 weeks or a week and a half. Well then, yeah, JDW, maybe just play out a couple more games and see what cohort you land in when your rating's not provisional. So you don't have to switch cohorts, 3 times in 2 weeks. But if your rating really tells you to play that you should be, 3 cohorts or 6 cohorts or some crazy, if the rating is saying you should be in a way different cohort, I think you just have to accept your rating, even if there's a chance the rating's wrong and that you end up having to demote yourself instead of advancing yourself. I think ultimately we have to trust the ratings kind of, right? And I'll tell you this, JDW, if you are spending a lot of your study time on playing your games and analyzing them, that work will carry over to any cohort at least. But in terms of, what positions to be sparring, what opening study to do, what books to be reading, all of that is cohort dependent. Almost none of that would carry over. So if you want to use Lichess Classical as your core rating, maybe focus first on getting in your Lichess games, getting your rating established. I would say is the opposite of provisional. Getting your rating established, then start doing other work in the cohort that tells you should be in. Your intuition won't let you think. Interesting predicament. I don't know anything about them, RKJ. Two pawn up endgame for black, but a tense moment as the knight gets challenged and doesn't have great moves available. White could have a burst of activity with bishop d5 and rook c7 or c8, so black needs a careful move. Goes for f4 check. I think that's brilliant from Lauren. with the idea of takes, king takes, rook g2, pawn takes knight, rook g5, with the winning 2-pawn up rook endgame. And there's no way out of it for white. If they go king h2, black has f3. Nice find by black. Great move. And now we can look for another game. That's maybe earlier on in the game. I have not seen a Blunderfest game in a while. Let's have a look. All right. Sanyal as white, who has just begun streaming, apparently, versus Blunderfest, perennial top player in the dojo events. Grabs a pawn on c4 and heads to e3 with that knight. That is 1 pawn up for black at the moment. And white has some ideas of play with knight h5 and queen g4. The black king position looks weak, but this knight e3 move looks like it's going to suck the life out of white's position to me. Yeah, f4 was a really nice find. 2400 is indeed quite impressive. 2400, rapid on chess.com. When you get up into those reaches, it's really kind of like pretty similar to 2400 FIDE level, I feel like. Maybe it's like 2300 to 2350.
Thank you so much for your help and for the stream.
You're very welcome, my friend. Thank you for supporting the stream, JDW. Thank you very much. Oh, black takes an exchange. Knight e3, queen h5, knight f1. I kind of like just the knight sitting here on e3, honestly. I was thinking maybe queen g5 for black. Or even something like a5, a4, queen e7 to e5, looking at d5. Very surprised to see Blunderfest just munching that rook. And now you're left to defend against all the angry white pieces. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but... RKJW, can you tell me something about the new apps of Endgame and Ani? I haven't heard of them. I don't know what they're supposed to do. As it so happens, today I clicked on endgame.ai for the first time because there's like a Hans versus Vidit match going on. And I clicked on it, and the immediate interface that came up, I couldn't see who was white or black. I couldn't see how much time they had. Part of the board was cut off. I tried to resize it. First impression was it wasn't quite ready, so to speak. But that wasn't an app. It was a website, an applet, I guess. Lakinther, can I recommend any resources on Winckelmann-Riemer Gambit? I don't really know of any specific resource on it. No, I mean, I have a couple of videos online about the Blackmer-Deemer structure / gambit. I've got a little bit of material up on it, but I don't know how much of it is, if any of it is specifically on the Winckelmann-Riemer Gambit. You might be beyond what I have there. Blunderfest is a bit low on time, as Foos Chess says. Yes. H4 stopping queen g5. I understand that move from Sanyal. After c5, the position looks very bad. Have you found any model games with good players? Like, are there any GMs who've played that position? You're saying knight d5 for white, and if black takes, bishop h7, king h7, rook f6, bishop f6. I mean, at first blush, white is down way too many pieces, but there's some chance of a perpetual attack like this. King here. No, it just loses. Yeah, knight d5, black could have taken it, as Viral Stigma said. Yeah. So we get h4. Rook a e8. White could try this, or they could try sitting around. Knight h5 is stronger. Queen's in the way of knight h5. That might be as good as it gets, like in third. Okay, here's an answer for you, Lakinther, that applies to any opening. So for folks out there not interested in the Winkleman-Reamer gambit, let's say there's some position that you're interested in, but you're struggling to understand it. You need more information or you need help with that position, right? What are your options for getting a better grip on some opening position, right? It doesn't have to be the Winkleman-Reamer. It could be this position here, G5, King's Indian, right? You want more info on it. What can you do? So one option is you put the position in a database and you play over the games played by the best players in that position. That's one option. Another option is you take this position and you go spar it with somebody. And just by playing out more games and talking to them, you'll be surprised. I know you feel like you need somebody to tell you ideas and how to play the position, but if you just set up the position, play it a bunch of times with a friend or training partner, right? To me, it's kind of the same thing, friend and training partner. Anybody who wants to play chess with me is pretty much my friend already at that point. And I pretty much always train with friends, so I don't know which way it goes, but anyway. If you play the position with another person back and forth, just by trying out stuff, you get a deeper insight into the stuff. That's kind of how analysis works as well, right? When we tell you to analyze your own games, just by playing out moves on the board, gradually you do discover some things. But if you spar an opening position like this, or like the Winkleman-Reamer with a buddy, and share your conclusions after each game, like you say, oh, I like this, oh, I like that. You switch playing white and black back and forth so each person has both perspectives. You'll get better and better at understanding what's going on and what the options are for both players. All right, white goes for g4, g5. Black challenges with d5, white's construction. Now we'll see what white does here. G6 would be trying to break the light squares. White takes on h6 instead. So that improves white's pawn structure, trading the doubled pawn for that h pawn. Black takes with queen. We might see a queen trade and then trying to win one pawn over here. White's still going to be down in exchange. Black could also take with the bishop, threatening the knight. Which looks playable as well. Took with the queen. Excuse me for a second, folks. Moving the mic. Richie, my friend, I see that you're hurting. And I would like you to be able to stop hurting. Well, taking a break can sometimes be an answer. Yes. White keeps queens on the board. Blunderfest takes apart a little bit of White's construction there. The truth is, Richie, there's not that many cheaters out there. We torture ourselves more by worrying about cheaters than the cheaters actually. We spend more time worrying about people who aren't even cheaters than we actually spend playing cheaters. You're really... I know cheaters exist. I know they suck. But you are somewhat responsible for your own torment here. If you're going to spend all your time worrying and thinking about them. So you don't have control over the fact that 1 out of 100 games somebody's going to cheat against you, maybe. But you do have control over how you feel about it and react to it. You know, are you going to let... I don't know, what percent of chess players are cheaters? You know, are you going to let 1 out of 1,000 people out there poison your time and your experience? Just every now and then, you waste a few minutes against a cheater. Oh, well, you know, just think of it as playing a bot. Some people choose to play bots. You know, I know you didn't choose to do it. I know it sucks. I have people come in here every single day. I have people coming in here every single day asking to one-on-one me on my stream in order to humiliate me with a computer program. And then say a bunch of insulting things about, and you're supposed to be an IM, blah, 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 blah. You know? I have people doing that to me when I play blindfold simul's. One day I was going back and looking through my old games, and I played a blindfold simul, 10 players at the same time. 3 of those 10 players, they could all see I was playing blindfolded and 10 games at once. 3 of those players decided that was the time to bludgeon me with computer engines, and they were all banned. It's just a part of... It's a very, very tiny part of life. It's a part of life, but a very, very tiny part of life, and you have control over how much it hurts you, to some extent. You've played enough games OTB and online to know how a player 600 points lower should play. I also think when I see someone with an account that is a few weeks old win a dozen games in a row. Sure. But everybody overestimates how much other people are cheating against them. I know you've got a lot of experience. I've got a lot of experience too. And I'm not right every time. I mean... And I'm not saying nobody's cheating against you, but honestly, there's lots of people who are not cheating. And I really, I'm really just sad to see you suffering like this. I can tell something's really, really wrong. I can tell it's hurting you a lot right now. People don't know if someone's cheating, Aries or Lat. That's part of it. People don't know if their opponents are cheating, so they can spend their time worrying about whether or not their opponents are cheating, or they can spend their time just playing their games and accept in advance, if I'm going to be a chess player, every now and then somebody's going to cheat against me. But Richie, against humans, sometimes there's nothing we can do. And it feels awful as well. It feels like being strangled. I've been strangled by humans many times where nothing works and it feels awful and I hate it. And they're not cheating. They're just humans. And sometimes in the middle of losing a game to a human, I hate it. All right, knight h5, preparing rook f4. Black brings the rook to the file. White grabs the pawn, drops the bishop, and the queen drops back to defend the king. Seconds left for Blunderfest here, but a full extra rook. No, for me, those humans are usually at least 2,000. GG. GG for who? It's probably not actually Anish Giri or Warrior Boys Productions. People like to use the names of chess players they're fans of. We have a Daniil Dubov account who plays in a lot of our weekend tournaments. Blunderfest, yeah. Down to the last 5 seconds every move here. This rook e2 move threatens maybe bishop takes h4. Queen d6 cleverly stops it. Bishop h4, there's queen g6. 2, 1. With 0.3 seconds, bishop e5. That's insane. 0.3 seconds. Yeah, so we've got a huge fan of Anish Giri here. That's fine. You've clarified it clearly. Perfectly fine to represent those that we are fans of. Rook g7. Wow. They're just on death's door on the clock here. Blunderfest gets enough time to see the board clearly for a moment, gets rid of the pawn on g3, and now the white king is done. Blunderfest is going to squeak it out. I have flagged many a position like this, but with like a 1 or 2 second increment. With a 5 second increment, I'm very confident I could have cleaned it up too. You don't need to be sorry, Richie. I'm just hoping to help you. I hope that's clear. I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong about anything. I like you. I'm very motivated to help you get out of the pain you're feeling. That's all. I don't care who's right or who's wrong, honestly. I don't like talking about cheating on the stream. You may notice that we talk about cheating even less than cheating occurs, right? like already I think cheating is somewhat rare, but we try and talk about it even less than it happens because it's a negative thing and a heated thing, and it's also something that we've covered, once or twice early on. We did some dojo talks. Coasted Jesse and I reflected on the whole thing, and then you just don't want to spend the rest of your life just dwelling in it, right? GG Sanyal, GG Blunderfest. Yeah, and I don't like to, rehash something that we've talked about a bunch of times. But I can't just see you in pain like that and not say something. I mean, you joined the under 1700 group instead of the over 1700 group. I don't know why, but that was one sign that something weird is going on. And then from things you were saying in chat, I understand you're very, very hurt. Not gonna risk it for a biscuit. Right on, Airy Chris. Not everybody needs a biscuit. Some of us just want to. What if a win is a biscuit? What would a draw be? What did you want? You just wanted a cracker. A cracker in hand is better than a biscuit in a risket, a nibble. In any case, Airy Chris, it says it's your first chat here, so welcome to the dojo, to the tournament. Hope you're enjoying it. It sounds like you're enjoying your games, so that's great. Like, I don't care if you win, draw, or lose. If you're having fun playing chess, that's great. So, yeah. Richie Warrior Boys Productions over on YouTube, who has about the same rating as you, says that they lost to a 1300 in a classical game on Friday Night Fights. And it happens. It may have been painful, but it does happen. Sometimes lower rated people play well. Yeah, of course, Airy Chris. Happy to host. Let's see how we're doing here on the tournament. We are maybe 2 hours into our tournament. No, an hour and a half into the tournament. I started the stream half an hour early for people to gather. Gefilte Fish. I love this artwork here, yeah. Sorry, I bumped my computer. This is one of my favorites with the variety of colors here. The orange on the wings here. Red fish, yellow fish. Nice variety of life. Definitely get that Hawaii feeling from it. If you go swimming around near a reef, you'll see pictures of all kinds of different colors. You'll see all kinds of different colored fish if you go near the reefs. Incredible. They're all these little fish with just so much color. But I love all of these, honestly. Yeah. A lot of exciting pieces. And we've got a whole couple more walls of it. I can't easily show you, but there's like 3 full walls of this stuff here. My kid was setting up an art gallery exhibition in the room here. And yeah, I love it. It's really wonderful when people have some, passion and excitement and put some energy into stuff. All right, let's open up another game, yeah? And Warrior Boys, Richie, thanks you for sharing that story there. I mean, it's worth it, Sanyal, in the sense of enjoying the game. It's maybe not worth in terms of winning the arena, but I don't know if your goal is to win the arena. I think a lot of people are just here to play some chess games versus having like a plan like they're going to win the arena. But I don't know. Maybe I assumed that wrong. Rapid is definitely stressful, Merles. There's definitely a point there in your game where I could feel some stress. All right, let's get into this game a little bit here. See, the history started as a Queen's Gambit. light squared bishop trade. First, black has to work to get the bishop on c8 into a good position. And then as soon as they do, white says, you know what, that is a good bishop. Gets rid of it. Symmetrical pawn structure. Normally this position would be fairly close to equal. Got some more trades coming in. Uh-oh, Spaghetti-O. Looking to win a piece based on the undefended queen on b7. Whoops. Chess.com arrows go haywire. So this is the issue for white, or for black. Undefended queen on b7. Foo's chess correctly finds knight c5 is okay. Yeah. And Richie goes for something else. Rook d8. Using the rook on d1 to not give an inch. Not even retreat the knight through c5 to b7. And white has to save the b pawn from the bishop. White also needs a tempo to get rid of their back rank mate at some point. So that's helping black to try and push a little bit. But now black would need one more piece to try and gain some advantage. With just the queen versus the queen, you can't really push in and make any real threats. e5, very controversial. Blocking the own bishop in for a little more space, just wanting to do something. I don't know that there was much to do here, period. But maybe like h5, h4, trying to grab some space on the king side would be the closest thing to an idea that I have. White gets fancy. These guys playing very speedily, Merles. Yeah, 13:40 versus 12 minutes with all the pieces hoovered off the board already. f3, perhaps slightly risky, weakening the e3 square. And the black queen can move anywhere, but she can't keep her eye on the e pawn. If she could stay on like e6 or something, you know, that would be crushing. She goes to c6. I thought she might go to b4. With a similar, perhaps, idea. Black can also play the move e4 here, and white's really weakened the e3 pawn. I do not like the f3 move at all, actually, right now. George Hornsby also calling for e4. That looks like a good move for black, yeah. Richie goes for it. I would guess the position was more or less equal after e5, and after f3, I now prefer black with his e4 move. But let me just check. Maybe there was a fear here. Maybe there was a danger that made white do this. Ooh, Yolio. 6 hours sparring. Great work. Great work. Let me see which position it was. Such an inspiring story. Such an inspiring story from Iolio. Let's go to materials. Sparring positions. Endgame sparring. Is it an algorithm or a sparring? These ones don't have numbers on them here. Let's try an algorithm. Sparring. Okay. So it is a sparring. But I have to somehow find out which one is number 21. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Smyslov Taimanov. Rook and bishop against the 3 pawns. In the last game you lost. So that's very painful, but it's a great sign that it's worth it to practice it some more. Trading rooks gives black a lot of counter chances. White wants the rook and bishop to work together, huh? E4, bishop f2 played, trade, b5. Looks like black made a small progress, but then draw was agreed. Okay. Let's see what other games we get. Airy Chris against Chess Elo Twitch. This looks like a good one. We're only 10 moves in. Let's recap this Reti opening here. Could definitely have played on Merles, yeah. Could definitely have played on. Viral Stigma also would not agree to a draw there. David Proust also would not agree to a draw there. He's a nice guy, so we don't mind a draw. No waste time, no waste energy. All right, let's see it. So they bring out the pieces. White grabs a little extra space with c4, but black's got all the pieces arranged on decent squares and now plays c5 themselves. One interesting thing, black's starting the central fight with the king still in the center of the board. So we'll see if the black king comes under any fire here or gets away scot-free. Oh, you sparred against people one cohort above, so it was more challenging even, yeah. I feel like black can probably safely castle in one move whenever they want to, but you just always wonder when you see somebody exploding the center with the king here, right? Is there any chance for the opponent to put a little pressure on? Yeah, I don't see anything. I don't see anything special for white. Chess Elo seems to hold it together. White doesn't find anything too special either, probably. Plays the bishop trade. I was really looking at this idea. Bishop f6, queen f6, knight e4. Going after this bishop. It was like playable, but it wasn't anything particularly crushing. Yeah, what next for white? We could try to develop the rooks and queen a little bit. Try to get this here, try to get this here, put our queen somewhere. Rook c1 comes in. Yeah, rook's well placed there. Now black's got the time to castle, and I don't see anything else more interesting to do than castling. I suppose, you know, rook c8 or rook d8 could be playable as well if black really wanted to not castle for now. But the endgame's got to happen again. Yeah, white could trade a knight at some point with knight e4. For example, here, as suggested by Stigma, you could go knight e4, hit these pieces. Pawn can't take because of queen d6. So you would get another trade. And we're just heading toward a lot of trades, basically. Something like this would be the idea. Totally possible. You're playing a league on 40 minutes. Well, then you are using a lot of energy, yeah. All right, white takes on d5, and now suddenly black develops a rook instead of recapturing. As they say, now's not the time to develop a conscience about development. Now you just want to be recapturing, standard recapturing. Yeah, it's possible, viral stigma. It's possible. Yeah, d takes e6 now makes sense. Well, thinker teacher, you're the one playing 2 tournaments in a row. You're showing some pretty good energy here yourself. You know, I only play 1 game a day now. I don't play thousands. You know what, guys? My blitz rating is at its all-time high. It's at its all-time high. You guys probably don't know that because I haven't played blitz on stream in a couple months. And the secret is I'm barely playing. I don't know if I can. Let's see how many games I've played in the last 90 days. 8 games. 8 games in 90 days. I don't see how to see the games. Anyway, it's very little. How do I close this now? Probably won most of them. I certainly have not played Title Tuesday, no. And the games I played were 3+2, not even 3+1 or 3-0. All right, white holds on to the extra pawn. First trades off a rook, then takes a pawn. Takes a bishop, oh no! Black lost sight of the bishops attacking each other. See, the pawn was in the way, but white didn't lose sight of it. Grabs the pawn. Black tries to win the knight. Ooh, that's a tricky question for white. Holy moly, what to do about the knight? Bishop f3. Yeah, there was nothing to do about the knight. White gives it back. Nice find from black. Rook d8. Recovering from bishop b7 in one move. It's amazing. But it does make us wonder this. After d6, what if black had done something like bishop g2, king g2, rook d8? That could have been a little bit scary, right? Then you might be glad you didn't take the pawn on f7 because you could play e7 to try and deflect these pieces from winning your knight. And now this is maybe too insane and mind-boggling and risky for all of us, but there might be this rook c8 move. I feel like now we're calculating stuff that's just way too crazy and risky. I'll just let some of you know that this stuff here exists. Whereas Icy says, there's also knight e4 in this position, similar to queen c1. So d6, fe6, takes the bishop, wins back to knight. Black's thinking here. Icy Stun has played 4 blitz games in a year. Hilarious. Such a slow pace. Right? Are we doing it right, thinker teacher? Am I working on an endgame sparring position myself right now? Iolio asks. Not currently. I have been working on opening sparring lately. Queen b4 from black. So they want to win back the knight without giving a queen trade. They want to be able to take with the rook. You want to know what openings I'm studying, Icy Stud? Yeah, I sparred some French with Jesse. I've been sparring also with Chess Gone Mad. Been covering sparred my repertoire against the Carl Khan finally. Oh, my dear Bible study, please close the stream while you're playing and come back as soon as you're done playing, if you don't mind. Did I ditch the kid? I didn't ditch it. I played it at my last tournament a couple times. It was nerve-wracking, agonizing, painful. I don't know if I'll play it at my next tournament or not. Okay, thank you, Chess Bible Study. Oh, sorry. Christ Bible Study. I just assume everybody's got chess in their username. Hopefully you've got me muted and you don't hear me mangling your name. Yeah, and of course I spar my own I spar my own Nightorf a bit recently, Icy Stun as well. Even though I don't need to. It's good enough without any further sparring. I've already sparred it 1,000 times. But, you know, sometimes people want to face my Nightorf for their own sparring pleasure. Oftentimes, we could even say. All right, A3. Perhaps black should accept the queen trade at this point, huh, George? At some point, you got to take this knight before it slips away. Let's say we tried queen c3 and white played knight b1. Ah, we waited too long to take it. It slips away, right? Sometimes you got to make sure that you get that piece. Ooh, the queen retreats. Airy Chris's knight receives a full and unconditional pardon. The kind of thing you would expect a financial criminal to get from an American president. That knight is just good to go. Well, we got to spend a move getting the queen off of the rook's file, but the pressure is off. The knight is safe. Viral Stigma found that a lot of people with bad records against d4 are kid players. And white plays a little positional move off on the side. Not yet even that concerned about saving the knight. Black could come back to the square that she got kicked from, and the knight would be doomed again. Are they not really concerned about this knight here today? This, you know, whether or not you win a piece is kind of the crux of life at this point here. Yolio, yeah. I did a bunch of that knight endgame sparring against a computer engine on chess.com, right? It was very, very tough. And I was reading this book, Knight Endgames by Averbach. So I was like in the best shape possible to play the knight endings. And I found that playing against the computer was still super hard. H5. So yeah, so they're not really that concerned about the knight. I mean, it makes us wonder if Chess Elo Twitch realized that they could have taken it when they had the queen and knight on the square. Like, did they understand that it was an option to take the piece? Because they back off and then they don't go back to b4 and they're just leaving the knight to its devices. Queen c2, well, that piece is going to be pretty free now. Oh yeah. 2 rook pawns, that's brutal, Richie. Yeah, it's a good book, Yolio Yellow, if you're interested in knight endgames. This book on stamps is a good book if you're interested in stamps. You tried 2 knights versus pawn. 2 holds in 20, but then you can cherish those 2 holds. Yeah, it's a little frustratingly difficult to spar anything against computer engines. It has to be something almost like algorithmic that you really have down cold. Otherwise, it can be pretty dispiriting. So Chesilo Twitch follows up h5 with the logical move g5, looking for more pressure from these pawns, trying to find a chink in white's king position. First, it creates a chink in black's king position, right? White could actually swoop in with queen g6 here. Chess.com would allow an arrow. Okay, white develops the rook. g4. Do save the bishop. Do save the bishop. So both kings getting opened up a little bit here with black's g-pawn thrust. Whether or not you learn any particular endgame, right? Be it 2 knights versus pawn, or rook versus the 2 rook pawns, or what I was defending against the computer, I think, was knight and 1 pawn against knight and 2 pawns. This was like years ago. I think that Iolio probably saw me doing that. The point of it is not just to master that one position. In other words, let's say you fail to master the position. Have you wasted your time? No. The idea is you're getting better at using knights, period, by playing the 2 knight versus pawn endgame, right? With the rook ending, you're getting better at using rooks and kings, you know? So you're developing your skills with those pieces that can apply to a whole range of of endgames. Sorry. Now the queen swoops in, gives that check. We get the trade. Can white take the pawn now with the bishop? I would suspect that they could. And they go for it. Okay. Trade, trade, trade. You have to know how to checkmate with 8 knights. Queen g7. So, yeah, so black ends up more worried about their king than white's king, so white navigates this phase successfully. That queen c2 to g6 was really good for activating the white pieces. That really helped white a lot. Right? So from here, these pawns, they could be menacing. The key to a position where the kings are opening up is partly like who's got pieces on good squares. And this queen c2, then bringing out the rook from f1 where the rook was bad, right? And then swooping in with the queen. Yeah, this really made black start to feel like, wait, I'm not attacking white's king. Maybe I'm the one getting attacked. So queen g7 got played. King h2, f4. b5. These pieces are stuck still. I mean, long to the endgame, it's persisting, this issue on the file. White still needs to untangle it at some point. And there goes black using the more active rook, and it feels like black's the one with an extra piece instead of white. Now white has another chance to untangle the knight. And this time they get it. Check. King up. All right, now white's rook gets into a good position. This knight could be great on a square like d4 or e5, I would think. Right, a nice central square where you attack some of black's pawns, maybe. Rook behind the passed pawn. Ooh, that was classy, Chris. That was classy. Some endgame skills that were just hiding, waiting for the endgame to be revealed. It is very difficult to show the full extent of your endgame skills during the middle game. So now it's coming out. Rook a8, grabs that pawn, tucks the king back away. Now I would personally attack this pawn with my rook and my knight and then just take it. That's how I would handle a situation like this. So that means, you know, rook on d4 protected by a pawn, knight on d4 protected by a pawn. Oh, but, you know, getting my opponent to resign is an equally strong technique from Chris. Well done. All right. Let's grab another game. Bravo to Chris and to Chess Elo Twitch. Can't win that position. That is true. You were running low on material with which to win that position at that point. A sober assessment. You should know that at your rating level, people often stalemate instead of checkmating at the end. So if you feel like toughing it out and going all the way to the end, you can play those positions out basically to checkmate. As long as you're under 1,000, I think, pretty reasonable. Another rule of thumb I use is if I'm confident of how to win the game, then sometimes I will resign because I have nothing more to learn from the game. But if you flipped around the board and asked me to win from my opponent's position, if I'm not completely sure how to do it, then I'll play a few more moves so my opponent can show me how they would do it. So that's something that I've used to figure out when to give up in a lot of my games. All right, let's see what kind of games we got here. Voltaris against MBH King Jordan. Looks like black's ahead a piece here. And on top of it, bishop c5 looks like it more or less finishes off white's king. Yeah, 15-5 is a bit more time. One of the things about it is the 5-second increment will allow you to sort of pull off some things like a 2-rook checkmate or a king and queen checkmate if you get down to an endgame but you've used up all your time. You can use the increment to sort of finish off some basic endgames you might know. I think you did a pretty decent job using your time. Yeah. So here there's queen c6 or knight f2. Oof, knight e4, king h1, knight g3. MBH King Jordan has become such a strong chess player. Beautiful. Beautiful. I mean, the pieces are hitting all the spots here in the middle game. Very, very strong board view. All right, an Evans Gambit for us between Willie Wororm and A Goldfarb. I'm inclined to follow this game for a bit. Cool, you seen some of his YouTube vids? That's great. D4. building up a pawn center, but the pawn center is capturable. White captures. The main line is d takes c3, you know, queen b3, knight c3. White plays with 2 pawns down. But here, black plays d3, leaving this sort of weird pawn on c3, just blocking our own knight. And white doesn't really want to spend their time putting their queen or bishop on this square, so white threatens f7 and leaves that pawn alive for a while. This unusual d3 line was played by Dufresne, or Dufresne, or something like that, in one of the most famous games of all time against Anderson. The Evergreen game, it was called. Really great game for anyone who's never seen it. e5. Looks like an insane pawn for black to capture. I would expect the queen to move on. Knight e5 does not technically lose the queen because after this, e1's not defended. And if you play rook e1 here, then I guess d6 defends the knight, and then queen b5 wins the bishop, huh? Okay, so we'd go knight e5 first, so that knight won't be attacking anything, just to be sure, and win a piece. Okay, so e5 cannot be captured. It does lose, straight up. Queen g6 played, rook d1 to collect the pawn and then come back, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, what you can do, Iolio, if you're curious about the Evans, is just spar it one day for a couple hours, you know, and just see if you get any kind of a feel for it, for white or black. Let's see, Willie Worm's flag is Italy, playing the Italian opening. True. True that. Knight e7. So if white tries to increase the pressure on f7, black could either castle, defending it with the rook, or even consider knight e5 now. So white's probably looking at bishop takes d3 here. Now black is only up 1 pawn. White needs to develop the queen side. Black playing quickly, only 30 seconds use, so they seem more comfortable in this line than white. Iolio suggests moving this knight here, here, here. Yeah. Oh, is this your game? Just having fun? Can you close the stream, or I'll switch games if you're unwilling. You're supposed to just be playing your game, you know, not talking to us about your game while you're playing it. I can watch somebody else's game if you don't want me watching your game. But just... No, not you, Iolio. Just having fun. You can check the replay later. You know, it creates like a recording. All right, bishop a3. And a Goldfarb, who might well be just having fun, castles immediately. Now the knight develops. Yes, hello to everybody watching the VOD. Hope you enjoy. Hope you enjoy. This is the preferred way of seeing what I said about your games, is to watch the commentary afterwards. Cheers, Thinker Teacher. Enjoy the league. Liga. Yeah, the short ones are having a great time, Blib Up. It's lovely here. Joyful sounds tinkling through the air. All right. White points back at F7, which the rook just stepped off of. Black's move suggested maybe they wanted to go knight g6 and take e5, you know. I think White's plan probably was knight e4. Probably. This is chess.com rated, but yeah, it's not OTB rated. So with this move, rook e8, Black's looking like they might want to take on e5, right? Maybe defending the knight so they could take on e5 right away, or maybe looking to play knight g6 and then take. So now White plays bishop c4. And now if Black plays knight g6, they would interfere with the queen's defense of f7 and just lose right there. So bishop c4, a6. I suppose looking to play b5. You would have maybe tried b5 right away, Merles. That is a move that Dufresne played in the game with Anderson. He played b5 at some point, sacking a pawn just to make White take, and play bishop b6, bishop b7. And that was the counterplay for Black, was against g2. But Dufresne also didn't take the time to even castle in that game, so his king was just in the center. Now we get knight e4, b5, very controversial. Controversial time has arrived. Maybe bishop d5 is coming, giving up the bishop pair. Full retreats might let Black take on e5. And White needs to keep that pawn probably for another move or two because they want to land like a knight f6 check sacrifice. Okay, bishop retreats fully. So the key line here is knight e5. For sure, that's the critical move. We can try calculating it. Black doesn't. It just keeps blitzing along. I mean, if all this is memorized by Black, that's just an insane degree of knowledge where you can only shake your head as White. But I'm a little suspicious of this. It's hard to believe that Black could have memorized this far along. And if Black hasn't memorized this far along, then we can say Black should have spent some more time thinking if it wasn't all memorized. All right, Icy Sun says knight e5, knight g3 hitting the queen to chase her off the knight. If she moves away, we take the knight for free. If knight f3 check, bishop takes, and we win the rook. Man, so Black recognized that very quickly, or knew it already. Yeah, Tim, I'd wondered about that line as well. Knight e5, knight e5. But instead of queen e2, I think Black would play queen e5, right? And then White's still scrambling. Okay, so we get h6. Moves for White now are knight g3 and knight f6. Oh, and knight f to g5, right? There's a big candidate move. Holy moly, knight f to g5. Attacking the queen. and f7. I feel like she'd have to go to g6. And then you could play bishop d3, knight e5. How does knight f6 work out? I don't really know, Blibub. The idea is to get rid of one pawn in order to have more attacks possible. Black could put the knight here or here. White might do something like rook here, I don't know. It was, Richie, yeah. Willie Worm forced to use a lot of time because it's a complicated position. And Black's confidence and speed gives White less time to figure out anything on Black's time. So it puts a lot of clock pressure on White when you know the opening really well like this. C4 could be played too. Yeah, with the idea of basically switching the bishop on a3 to the b2 diagonal, right? Okay, Viral Stigma says maybe we could make knight g5 work by starting with queen c2. Okay, let's say Black plays queen g6. Then would you go bishop d3, huh? And if they leave the queen there, you'll have knight g5, queen g6, bishop h5. Rook d3 played after intense thought. I love it, using all the pieces. Right, this rook can come to d1 or e1, and this rook gets a lift. I love this move, Willie Worm. I love it. You're some kind of a genius. For a moment there, after I saw this move, I thought we were watching two masters or, IMs or something playing. And then I saw again that your rating and your opponent's ratings are 1700. But this move is super classy. Super classy. I mean, wow. What a level. Black finally grabs the pawn. White trades. Black can't take on e2 because of queen f7. White brings some more heat. Black tries to cover it with the queen. Yeah, White doesn't want a queen trade. That's not good enough. That's what I was thinking too, Merles. I was thinking maybe Icy's idea was still here. Knight g3 attacking the queen. And she can't keep the knight defended, right? And if you take here, then bishop here. Queen g6. Hoping for this, right? Bishop e4. And then I thought the queen has to move, and then you take. So I think this was a very strong idea for Willie Worm. Just had to find this knight g3 move again. Clock situation's tough for White, down 10 minutes on the clock. Saves the knight and the bishop on e2 at the same time. White is down 2 pawns, threatening rook e3. Black stops rook e3. White could play c4 or bishop d3 here. c4 looks particularly spicy. But maybe it's a little bit slow. c4, I have the crazy idea. Oh, but it doesn't work maybe because of back rank. I don't know, of doing like this. I'm trying to play rook e3, right, by blocking out this bishop. And if knight f3, bishop f3, then I'm threatening this and this. Queen e1 maybe doesn't mate me. White brings out the rook. Black develops the bishop. Hey, Jalp. Pretty good. Pretty good. Bishop b7. I don't see where to go now. Now it feels like the initiative has run aground for white. Doubles rooks on the d pawn. d6 would normally be fine. But black goes spicier. Attacks a bunch of things, leaves the d7 pawn hanging. At some point when your opponent's gambiting, it's true, you can just stop. You can just stop defending things and counterattack. Bishop c1. Okay, so I think black's biggest threat was knight e2 check. That's what I'd expect now. Goldfarb goes for it. And that's going to win a full piece after the queen takes. GG to Goldfarb. So you just saw confidence really paying off, or backed up, rewarded, right? I mean, Goldfarb appeared to know what they were doing to a very high degree, played very quickly, put a lot of pressure on Willie Worm. That said, the masters and experts in chat believed in Willie Worm's position throughout and thought that this knight e5 move could have lost a piece to knight g3 at a key point there. For sure, Merles. My most painful experience in chess in the last 2 or 3 years was like a training classical game I played where my opponent spent like 5 minutes and I spent an hour and a half and then resigned. And they just didn't think about any moves. And you know, nowadays I don't often, there's not a lot that hurts anymore when I play chess, right? Like I'm not so tied into the ego and the this and the that. You know, much more about playing and having fun and learning and thinking about some things and talking to my opponents and all that. That's the one experience that really hurt. You know, yeah, that one really, that is still an experience. Have I checked out Chessify? I have not. Christ-centered Bible study. I just use Chess Dojo to organize and store my own games. You know, not to sound like a walking advertisement, but we have a very good chess base alternative on our website, and that's what I use now. It allows me to store everything in very convenient folders and keep things organized in a way that works for me. My chess base files were never organized the way I would have wanted them to be. Yeah. Cool. Oh yeah, blah blah. I don't mind when my opponent blitzes during the game, because yes, I understand that there's ways to turn it to my advantage, right? But after you lose without your opponent ever having had to think about the game, there's a certain feeling that can come with that, right? Where you're like, okay, so I can think for an hour and a half, and you don't, and you think for 5 minutes, and your 5 minutes is better than my hour and a half. There's a certain kind of frustration that can come there. Magnus or Hikaru, I would expect to be able to do that. They could be in an alternate world or playing a clock simul or something, and I think that by blitzing with 5 minutes on the clock, they could beat the level of my normal classical play. But even there, it would hurt a little bit. Understood, Viral Stigma, and the wait continues. So you're welcome to use stuff outside of Chess Dojo, of course. Everybody is. Just cool for us to know what else is going on. And I think there's more and more good things out there. You know, more and more people doing great doing great chess projects since chess has become more popular, right? You've got more and more people doing good chess related stuff. Hey Olio, you've been using Dojo for 2 months and you haven't played any games in those 2 months. Should you put any older games in there or wait for new ones? You can do either, you know. You can wait 3 weeks, play a tournament, put those games in. Or you could grab 1 or 2 games. If there are older games of yours that are of interest to you, either to show to people, just to put them up there so that other people in your cohort can look at them. Or if there are some games of yours that aren't too old that you're still interested in analyzing, you can put them up there just so you can work on analyzing a game of yours. Something I sometimes do before a tournament is look at my best games just to feel better about myself. So you could pick like 3 or 4 of your favorite games and just put them up, you know, just to feel cool about yourself. That helps me get psyched up for a tournament, get excited, feel good about myself. Yeah, Foos Chess, Anand did that. It's true. And it was really, really disconcerting for his opponents, right? When he would play classical games at sort of a rapid speed and still win, it was just brutal. Brutal for his opponents, you know, disorienting and all that. All right, folks. That's my 3 hours. I got to get back to the family. It was a fun tournament. I think there's half an hour or 28 minutes maybe left for those in the tournament, so you can all keep playing, anybody who wants to. Send the links here one more time. My understanding is that tomorrow is Monday, so I should be able to do a little stream tomorrow. And yeah, no special announcements other than that at this point. So I'm just going to wish everybody a great day. Find a channel to raid here. And see folks tomorrow. All right, I'm going to send you over to Rachel, who has been doing some episodes of Endgame Sensei with me lately. So somebody I met recently who's really cool. Hope you enjoy it. And yeah, take care, everybody.